This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing back in studio. It is pre-Classic week. Big week coming up next week in Fort Worth, Texas. Lake Ray Roberts, the second time that the Classic has been there. Hank Cherry, part of his back-to-back. The last time the Classic was there when he won on Gunnersville, I think, and then Ray Roberts. A little bit different vibe this time. Weather's going to be a little bit different than it was the last time they were there. We got a lot of stuff planned for Classic week. We got a full week of BTLs this week, back after a disastrous Bassmaster Open on Kentucky Lake. So I fished 2 opens this year. Level, like perfect, even 100th. This past one, I caught 1 fish in 2 days. I finished perfect level 200th. So that just means the next one I'm going to win. Then I'll have a 100th, and a 200th, and then that'll average out to 100th. And then we'll see how it goes. That's the way I'm going. We'll get a little bit into maybe some self-fulfilling prophecies when it comes to that later in the show. We also had 4 crazy tournaments that went down this past week. You had Drew Gill, 2-time winner of the BPT, outlasting Jacob Wheeler. Some crazy stats with Drew Gill that you're going to get to hear in the second episode of Best on Tour this week, which drops at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning on the BTL channel. Jason Christie goes over to the NPFL, locks a big spinnerbait in his hand, over 80 pounds, 5 bags over 30 there. Oki wins the Bassmaster Open, 66 pounds mixed bag on Kentucky Lake, a smallmouth, and then I think it took over 82 pounds to win the Toyota with another 5 bags over 30 there on Sam Rayburn. So a lot of big fish. And some of those you can use a net. So a lot of big fish in the net and over the gunnel. Speaking of someone who's caught a lot of big fish this year, that would be the current Bassmaster Elite Series Angler of the Year leader after the first 2 events in Florida. John Garrett got 4th at the St. Johns River and then backed that up with a 2nd place finish at Okeechobee. So we'll get to him first. But before we get to that, coming up in May, one of the things that I always do is I raise money along with Adam Bartuzik and along with a lot of other people across the country for the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic that takes place the first week of May in Wabasha. One of the really cool things that is happening this year is I was talking to Chris and Trait Zaldain, and we had him on the show last month, and I wanted to bring Chris back in because they were planning, well, we'll bring Chris in right now. So you were just, what's up, Chris?
What's going on? Good morning, everybody.
So you guys were just planning, you're like, hey, it's the Classic is in the home state. Let's just have a knockdown drag out party. Let's do it on Monday before the Classic. It's kind of the last day that you guys get to unwind. And then you were like, there's a potential here for a charity element to it. Long story short, Trait did a lot of work behind the scenes, partnered with St. Jude and Cook's Children, which is based right there in Fort Worth, and now the general public can go to a freaking awesome Texas-themed crawfish boil, adult beverages, the Monday before the Classic, where the majority, if not all, of the Classic competitors will be there. So you can shotgun a Busch Light with Lee Livesey, take a shot of Goldschlager with you, and then eat some crawfish.
Yeah, absolutely. Trait's been, hard at work with this. Gilchrist Automotive, they had a lot of help with this. But we've made several Classics throughout my career, and there's just that weird day. It's that Monday. The guys, myself, will be practicing after 3 days on Lake Ray Roberts. There's that Monday. We practice Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's that Monday. It's our only off day. And really, the Classic anglers don't know what to do with that Monday. They check into the hotel downtown Fort Worth there, and and then their Monday is off. So we figured, hey, look, I mean, in the history of as long as I've been doing this, there hasn't been an organized party on that Monday night, and Trait saw that opportunity to get St. Jude and Cook Children's Hospital involved, and we're selling tickets to this event. There it is right there. It's the Classic Crawfish Boil. You buy your tickets at classiccrawfishboil.com. It's Monday, March 17th. And, BTL, there's a lot of listeners from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas. This is our hometown, guys. And come on out. There's live music. It's free crawfish. Once you get there, crawfish boil, beverages. It's from 6 to 10 p.m. Now, the tickets are only sold online, so go to the website. It's $150, and before you say, "Wow, that's a little steep," you're getting the crawfish, you're getting live music, you're getting drinks, and you're getting to hang out with the classic anglers. Like I said, they'll be fishing for 3 days,
and the proceeds go to St. Jude and Cook Children. So that's
exactly.
That's
so you're hanging out with the guys, drinking, having a good time, and 100% of these ticket sales go to St. Jude and Cook Children's Hospital. So it's absolutely just a great cause. And Trait, myself, Gilchrist Automotive, all the people involved, yourself, put a lot of sweat and tears into this event. And again, it benefits a great cause. So also doing raffle tickets as well. You can buy it there as well. We're going to have a bunch of things to raffle off, $25 a raffle ticket. But the door tickets, they're limited, so make sure.
There are no tickets at the door. You have to buy your ticket online. That way, you
Yes.
can do it. It's like a legal thing with
Can't just show up
beverages and how it works, and that way it is. So, classiccrawfishboil.com. Monday, March 17th. If you are in that Dallas-Fort Worth area or anywhere in the surrounding, great opportunity. Come out, get a hotel room, hang out with all the classic guys, donate to a great cause, eat crawfish, drink a few beverages, and that's what it is. If you're unable to attend, you can also just donate also as well directly to either St. Jude or to Cook's Children Hospital. And then if you have any other questions about attending, donate at classiccrawfishboil.com. But really cool concept that you and Trait put together, and then I think it just kind of grew a life of its own once you added that charity element into it. This was the last night you guys get to blow off steam, because Classic Week is stressful, is it not, Chris?
Oh my gosh, it's got to be here at this time, got to be there at that time. You got to show up with your jersey, photos, media. Oh, by the way, you got to try to catch 15 of the biggest bass you've ever caught in your life to win $300K and a Brown trophy. So a lot going on. It's just a great night for the guys to unwind and hang out with some of the VIP, VIP customers, guys who buy the tickets and come hang out with us. Again, thank you for having me on here. I know the BTL crowd, again, there's a lot of them in this area. So come out and see us, guys. It's going to be a phenomenal
Also,
time.
big shout out to Gilchrist Automotive, Southwest Platinum, Triple Crown, Pegasus, Spur. Those guys put a lot of money in to make this happen. For more donations to go directly to that St. Jude and Cooks. I just hit 50K on my 2024 2500 HD. Could not be happier with it. I know you've been running the Yoda up and down the road.
Oh yeah, just amazing vehicles at the best prices for fishermen too. I mean, these guys all tournament fish. Everyone at Gilchrist Automotive, they're all tournament fishermen. So they know exactly what you need when it comes to a tow vehicle.
Yep. Mike asked about the Bass Fishing Saves Lives t-shirt that we do with St. Jude for that Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic. I actually have a call later today with that clothing company. Those will be available in the next couple weeks. So you guys can get that t-shirt if you're not able to come here too also. So I do want to ask you one more question. So I was perusing Instagram yesterday, and I was following, it was like the triple Texas Team Trail, and then you posted, and it looked like one of the most miserable days on the water that you could ever fish on Lake Texoma. Like, I saw sleet, rain, wind, and cold.
I decided to hop into a Texas Team Trail event sponsored by Bass Pro Nitro, Progressive, all that. It's only an hour and a half from my house, but it was the second time I've been to Lake Texoma. and shorts and t-shirt the day before. On the practice day, we were catching them minnowing, out there suspended. It was awesome, a great time. The very next morning, 43 degrees. It never got above 45 degrees that day. It hailed on us twice. It was sleeting. It was sideways rain the whole day. And myself, my partner, Justin Rogers from Southwest Toyota, we just kept looking at each other like, why? Yeah, brutal. Yeah, we posted that video, and it's literally hail coming down, just, what seemed like, every hour. It's crazy.
You're going to be doing a lot of interviews the next couple weeks. Hometown guy competing in the Classic, Andre Roberts. I want to ask one question. Does this Classic set the 3-day Bassmaster Classic weight record to win?
Absolutely. I think, what is the record anyway?
I don't know, but it's going to set it.
People have been asking me. I think it's going to take 75 pounds a day to win. So that's 25 a day. If not, it might take even 80, 25, 30. I'm afraid of this guy coming up next, man. John Garrett. This guy is on a heater, absolute heater. The good thing is I look at my 10-day forecast every single morning. I've been getting up looking at my 10-day forecast, and that weather we had on Texoma just 2 days ago, all that is done. Yesterday was our last day of clouds and rain in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. For the next 10 days, sunshine, 50-degree lows, 80-degree highs, just beautiful spring has sprung type weather. And that sets up perfect for, what I like to do, but, the big stuff. Yeah. And so hopefully the minnow shaking and that type of thing is out of the picture. Guys will still catch them on that, but I'm expecting 25 pounds a day to win this Ray Roberts Classic. It's going to be phenomenal.
It's going to be a last to first story, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right,
Chris, I appreciate it. Thanks for getting up early.
For having me. We'll see you on Monday night, March 17th, 6 to 10.
Classic Crawfish Boil. Get your tickets, benefiting St. Jude and Cook's Children in Fort Worth. See you, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
All right, the one and only Chris Zaldain. We're going to take a quick break and then return with the man that Chris just mentioned, John Garrett, who has a lot of momentum. I mean, if you count redfish, the guy's on like a top 5 heater. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. It's BTL on a Monday. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Your early morning mentality is your every hour mentality. All gas, no brakes. Focus, purpose, power. Destined for the water, but confident everywhere else. A calming buzz before the storm, truth of nature itself. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. There's a limit out there, but it's not with your gear. Unrelenting power delivery, unparalleled weight savings, keeping you on the water whether you run a 9.9 or outscoping your best 5. In this rare air, there's power in the silence. It's a mindset, thinking only of the things that matter and freeing your mind from the things that you trust.
All right, welcome back, BTL on a Monday. I'd be curious to know if our next guest is a believer in momentum. Like, is each tournament an independent event that happens and then you just move on to the next one and put it behind you? Or can you go into the biggest tournament of the year on an absolute heater and just know you're going to catch him? What are your thoughts on that, John Garrett?
That's a lot. It's a lot to think about there. I feel like when you have the back-to-back events, like last year we had back-to-back New York events. This year we had back-to-back Florida events. I feel like momentum for sure is a thing. But when you have a good break between tournaments, I feel like in your mind you feel like it's going to keep rolling, but sometimes it doesn't transpire on the water. But yeah, looking forward to the Classic. Feel like we're going to catch them and going to keep having that mindset. So we'll see.
I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with your stats because you did it, but going all the way back to 2016, even in your college days, you have had a knack for stringing together multiple top 10s in a row. Like it's not just like one and then a middle and then one. Like you have a ninth, a second, and a first back then. You have back-to-back force. Here's a back-to-back force again, followed by a sixth, a third and a fifth back-to-back, an eighth and a fourth back-to-back, and then you're on a fourth and a second. And then, like I said, if you count the Yamaha Bassmaster Redfish Cup Championship presented by Skeeter, you top five that. You top five that as well. But I know you probably listened to Chris Zaldain in that first section. You're expecting a slugfest in a week and a half here down in Texas, just like he is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, it doesn't matter where. I mean, Texas, of course, is going to be a little bigger. Everything's bigger in Texas, but no matter where we're going in the country this time of year, you're going to see the biggest bass in the lake being caught by our guys. So big weight. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with Ray Roberts. Never been out there. Haven't done a lot of studying for the tournament. But I expect the guys to really catch some big bass. I'm not sure how many fish are going to be caught. But yeah, looking for some big weights, no doubt.
All right, off to a really good start this year. Actually, you could not, unless you won one, you're the best start out of all the Elite Series, which I mean, it's nice to be number one. Like, have you even looked at that list yet, or is this just like way too early to be like, oh, Angler of the Year leader? Like, do you have to like get through the half of the season before that kind of starts playing? Or
yeah, I mean, of course, I look at the points. You look.
You're not a Polinick guy who lies and says he hasn't looked at him since 2019.
Yeah, unless you're Polinick, everyone looks at the points after a good tournament, a bad tournament, mediocre tournament, however that is. I mean, I looked at them, and it means just very little 2 tournaments into the season. I mean, we got 7 very diverse tournaments left on our schedule. So maybe at the halfway point, Matt, maybe a little after that, then I'll start worrying about that.
So you start out with a 4th at the St. Johns River. That same event last year, you finished 60th in. Was there anything from last year that allowed you to finish in the top 5 this year that you said, I need to do this, or I'm not going to do this?
Yeah, it really Bass did a favor for me because they made Rodman Reservoir off limits. It's one of those places, like when you go to a place that's so vast and you've never been there before, I've never been to St. Johns River before, you want to tell yourself, at least I do, like, how can I skirt by this tournament, salvage points, and get on to the next one? And Rodman Reservoir is kind of the ticket for the St. Johns River. Let me go get a check. Let me catch a few bass. And that was off the table. And that made me fish the St. Johns River, a typical Florida tournament. Got tide involved. Couldn't really scope that much. So that just put me, put my mindset, I can't do Rodman. Let me fish how I like to fish. Let me stay offshore and see how things shake out. So Bass did that top 5 favor for me this year, no doubt.
When you made the Elite Series, you were kind of touted as like a new school angler with old school roots. Like you liked the power fishing, you liked to crank and wind, but you could also get out there and we're an electronics guy. Does it seem, you're a fan of the sport as well, looking across all of the tours from Toyotas to BPTs and Elite Series, we've had a fairly old school start to the 2025 season across the board without few exceptions.
Yeah, absolutely. It does help. I mean, I feel like I'm fortunate enough to just be in that, generation or age class or whatever you might have. When I grew up in college, that, leading up to college, it was not all about forward facing. It was about map study, side imaging, down imaging, reading your maps really well. But then halfway through my college career, it started to be about forward facing. So I had to, like a lot of our guys, we had to learn not with forward facing, but now applying that to what we already knew. So being able to do both, not the best at either one of them. I'm just pretty decent at both. So that definitely helps out. No doubt about it.
Let's go to Okeechobee then. Probably one of the biggest comebacks that I can remember in recent history. You had a classic Florida limit to open up that event. I would imagine was that $5 for 10 pounds, and you went, uh-oh.
That was actually 4 mini bucks and a big one.
Oh, really?
That was 4 this long and one almost 5 pounds. Yeah. So, yeah. Florida.
So
Florida
what happened the next 3 days to go 22-7, 23-3, and 23-5? And I don't think anyone was catching Brandon in this one. That was a unique situation, but kind of walk me through the comeback effort to finish second.
Yeah, I mean, the area that I fished was one of the few areas with clean water and vegetation. I mean, there wasn't much vegetation on the system at all, but this had vegetation away from the bank. And we had fallen water every single day leading up and during our tournament. I went in there day one, caught a limit, and got out of there because I didn't think I'd catch a big fish. Well, day two, I went in there, had about the same size bag, 10 to 12 pounds. And later on in the day, the females just started biting. And I really didn't know that there was females in there. I mean, it was inches deep for almost a mile leading into that area. So in my mind, all those big fish were not there. They'd already pulled out with the drop in water. But I just did not give myself enough time on day one for that water to warm up and those females to start biting. But day two, me and John Cox were sharing that area, and right around lunch, I mean, just it went off in there. I mean, I caught 22 pounds in a snap of a finger. He caught 25 pounds, and we were looking at each other like, oh gosh, they're living in here. They just haven't been biting. So that was just a big key for me. I mean, the stable water, the wind not blowing hard, it's slightly warming up, and I was just very fortunate to be at the right place in the right time, not just day two, but to be able to see that potential for day 2, 3, and 4 moving forward.
So you think those females had been there but weren't biting, or do you think they flooded in there? Do you think they weren't there, or do you think you were putting your stuff inches from them and they were just being like Florida bass and just being like, no, thank you?
Yeah, I think they had been in there, and I think that is most case scenario. Like when people, I mean, I can't speak for all cases, but most of the time we're like, oh man, the females moved in. Most of the time in Florida, you are probably around the females. They are just not biting. I mean, we're talking about the most fickle fish in the country is a Florida strain bass. And that's why you really see, like myself and Brandon and Greg DePalma, like you see all these guys catching big bags on a crankbait. You're just able to trigger those big bites. And when you're up shallow, flipping a worm or swimming a jig, you're really not able to trigger a really good reaction bite. So I was around them, and they just decided to start biting enough to, let me know they're there. And that gives you a little more confidence to fish harder, a little more thorough as well.
Is Florida a little bit more of a mind game in the past recent years, regardless of the fishery in Florida? I mean, we saw it one out of a canal this time with Brandon Polinick and a lot of the top guys. You go back over the last 2 or 3 years, and there's been some really unique ways that the fisheries have been won on non-traditional baits in non-traditional areas. So you guys go in, you've got a 2.5 days of practice or 3 days of practice for that. 5th largest body of water completely contained within the United States. How do you structure your mind of going, okay, I have to break all this down, but then I also don't want to miss the 100 pounds that could come out of a canal? Is that something that plays like on the Elite Series now, where guys are trying to figure out where the heck to go to when it used to be pretty straightforward. It's going to go down in spot A, B, or C.
Yeah, no doubt. And like you said, very vast body of water. And someone like me, I've never been there before. So you get that battle like, do I see the lake? Do I see the canals? Do I see this? Do I see that? And a lot of it also has to do with the technology we have now. When canal fishing was pretty much strictly a spawning area. Um, and what you're seeing now with the technology, you're seeing people be able to catch the canal fish that are not spawning, and that's got something big to do with it. When you're on the lake, you always have that opportunity of catching a non-spawning bass, flipping a reed head, swimming a jig, punching them out, whatever that might be. But when those fish are in a canal, they spawn up where you can see them, and they slide off into deeper water, so it makes it tougher. But for me, I just put the boat in gear and I rode around until I saw some areas that I liked. And I actually watched some bass live from years before. And on day one, I ran all the traditional spots where guys had done good and I didn't get bites. And I could tell by the first day of practice, a lot of our field was doing that as well. But yeah, the technology. And I'll also say this, there was not a lot of clean water on Okeechobee. So a lot of people want to get in clean water. Canals always have clean water. And I feel like that put more people in canals and also put more people in some backwater areas and not doing well in the main lake.
You're a TVA guy, but you're also really good in Florida. You've got a blue trophy that came in Florida. I think you now have 4 or 5 top 10s in Florida. Give me your top 3 things that make a guy who is not from Florida, who did not grow up in Florida, the top 3 things and a guy like from Tennessee can do to have success in that state.
I think the obvious one is to slow way down when you're around fish. I'm talking about creep speed. You know, when you get a bite, put your poles down and cast every inch around the boat. So, I mean, slowing way down is kind of the obvious one. And for me, the past, 5 or 6 Florida trips, if you're wanting an opportunity to win a tournament in Florida, no matter the time of year, you have to find a way to catch fish on a medium to deep diving crankbait. It's hard. It is so hard to find, but so rewarding, and you can do so well when you find it. You know, I've been talking a lot about Florida the past couple of weeks. Is what we all think. Like we all think that the Florida bass live shallow and around the bank at all times, which I feel like now that we're fishing for such a small population of the female bass, the big bass in Florida, when we're fishing shallow. I mean, they spawn for such a long period. I'm talking October to April is when fish spawn in Florida. So pretty much half the year. So when you have such small waves spawning in Florida, you're not fishing for a lot of spawning bass at one time when you're trying to catch a spawner. So you really have a population of females pre-spawn, post-spawn that are living offshore all year round, even when you think fishers should be spawning. And the reason why you need to figure out how to catch them on a big crankbait is what we hit on earlier, Matt, is that just being able to trigger that bite. It's so hard to trick a Florida bass, and being able to do it with speed is a big key. You're able to do it a lot easier. So being able to catch something with speed, is a big crankbait. And when you find them offshore, a lot of times they're a little better. Tip number 3 is probably find clean water. I mean, you get a lot of sediment in the water, north wind, south wind, whatever that might be, is run around, find some clean water. Not all clean water is productive, but most of the time, all productive water is clean. So fishing slow, try to find a way to catch them on a crankbait, and find clean water.
Sound advice. Yeah. This is your second classic coming up. The first one was you were the bracket guy, right? In 17,
yeah.
When you fished at that was Conroe. That was the Jordan Lee I broke down and caught 30 pounds on a mop jig tournament.
Yep, that's it.
Go back to that tournament after winning the bracket. You've had, you fish in the Classic, and now you're going into 2025. How much more equipped, how much better prepared, how much different of an angler do you feel like than the last time you launched a boat in Texas for a Bassmaster Classic?
Yeah, that first Classic I fished, I mean, I think I was 18. So I mean, I was young, and I had, a little bit of tournament success, but I was no idea how to put good tournaments together. When I looked up on something, I was able to catch them, but I did not know how to find winning fish and stay on it for more than one day. And I was just young, not a lot of experience. Going into that tournament, I told myself that, you know, I really wanted to enjoy the moment. I wanted to have a good time, and I knew I wasn't prepared as an angler to win that event. So that's what I did. I mean, I fished as hard. I practiced and fished as hard as I could. I didn't stress about it. I wasn't popping gray hairs because I didn't have a limit, halfway through the day. But I was really trying to soak in that moment. I think me taking that, aspect and that approach, that Classic, really made me fall in love with that Classic. I mean, seeing Jordan win that tournament opened my eyes, and I feel like the entire college fishing, I feel like it opened so many eyes that it's like, you know what, this is possible. So that Classic meant a lot to me. And then fast forward 9 years, 8, 9 years, something like
Holy
that.
cow. Yep.
Yes, a long time
That
ago.
seems like yesterday.
Yep.
Weighing in the arena.
Yep.
Or in the stadium.
So, yeah, no doubt. So that is a lot of time, 3 or 4 more years college fishing, prep me. And then, as you know, the 4 or 5 years I spent on the opens are the most testing times I've ever spent on the water. So the stressfulness, the competitiveness, and how tough the Bassmaster Opens are really prepared me for where I am now. And just having a different mindset on tournaments, listen to your gut, all those little voices you have in your head that you're fighting and you accept, all that kind of stuff is kind of learn how to navigate through all that. And the first one, I was trying to have a good time. The second one, I'm trying to win. I've got a little taste of blood last year in Florida, smelled some blood the past couple weeks in Florida, and now, we're going out for it at the Classic next week for sure.
I wrote it down a sentence. You said you learned how to put good tournaments together. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think we've all had good days on the water, or we found a magical spot that you can go back to and you're like, oh my God, they're still here. But is that the true mark of a professional, in your opinion, is learning how to put good tournaments together?
Yeah, and I guess I had a different meaning when I said that. It's like maybe not the results, but doing and capitalizing on all that what you put yourself in front of, or what gets put in front of you. Whether that's barely making a 50 cut, whether that's coming in 75th and not 110th, or making a top 10. I mean, there's some tournaments where we're not on anything and something small feels like an accomplishment. And what I've really been doing the past, 3 or 4 years is when I'm on the water and if I think of something, you know what, maybe I should be doing this, or maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, is listening to that thought. Because when you're doing the correct thing, most of the time you have no questions in your mind. You're confident what you're doing. You're anticipating that next bite. You literally think that next flip or cast, you're going to lock up on one. But when you think, you know what, maybe I should try this, is to go with it. And that's so hard to do when maybe the day before, week before, you were doing so good in practice. But just, making the most of what gets put in front of you for a tournament. I didn't really mean the finishes, but the accomplishments for each tournament, puts in front of you. So
yeah, so you could leave with a top 10 and be disappointed and feel like you did not fish to your capabilities, and be more satisfied with a 40th place finish because of the moves and the decisions that you made. That's what you're talking about, putting a good tournament together, and be just as happy with that 40th or more happy than you would be with the top 10.
Exactly.
Are you good for another segment here? Because I'd like to take a quick break and then
I'm good.
I'm good on like TVA fisheries now. I just got my ass handed to me on a TVA fishery, and I noticed a couple things over the course of that Bassmaster Open on Kentucky Lake that I think some of our listeners might be able to learn about, and some of the things that I've been racking my brain about because I've always struggled on them. And you're one of the best out there, back from your college days. So because you went to college, Bethel, right?
Correct.
That's like right in the heart of TVAville.
Yep. Bethel is right down the road from my house. I live 45 minutes from Paris, so TVA guy myself.
Yeah. I was considering starting a petition to like fill Kentucky Lake in with cement and put an amusement park on it, but then I realized it was just me. And when you've got 25 pound bags of smallmouth coming in, like, that's not the fishery's fault. That's my fault.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. This past week, you could definitely get the feeling like that, no doubt.
Yeah. All right. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, more with John Garrett, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro, coming off of 2 top 5 finishes in Florida. It's BTL on a Monday. We'll be back right after this. This is Gamakatsu's new Nano Alpha line of hooks. If it looks familiar, that's because they are. It's the same shapes and sizes in the round bend and the EWG and in the new Horizon head that you know and love from Gamakatsu, but there are a couple new features with this Nano Alpha, which is this little green label that you see on the packaging. First off, 2 times faster hook penetration. That's because of the Nano Alpha smooth coating on it, and also it is 4 times more corrosion resistant. Check it out, Nano Alpha.
I've been using Sunline Shooter for the majority of my career. Millions of dollars made, lots of bass caught, and the gnarly stuff. If you need a abrasion resistant, tough fishing line for the really, really mean stuff, Sunline Shooter is for you.
Beatdown is efficient.
Rock solid.
100% American made.
This thing is super tough. I mean, this thing is not going anywhere.
I've ran the Beatdown double stack from Florida all the way up to New York. And the one thing that I know is when I get to my fishing destination, I never have to worry about issues with my graph mount.
Your options are endless with these mounts, but they're steady, they're solid. These are the most reliable mounts on the market, and you can't go wrong with the Beatdown.
When you're ready to hit the water, Denali Fishing has you covered. Regardless of your skill level, from beginner all the way up to tournament pro, Denali has rods, reels, and tungsten to get the job done. Check them out at denalifishing.com. All right, welcome back, BTL. Chatting with John Garrett. Are you old enough to remember when Kentucky Lake, like when I first started covering the Bassmaster Elite Series, went to every tournament for 11 years, covered it. Some would say that was a couple years too long, but Kentucky Lake, I remember out with Harold Allen when Bobby Lane was on a shell bed on a bar, and the helicopter comes around the corner and there's 150 boats there, and he's got on a fat-free shad and a Carolina rig and a 10-inch worm, and he just, he just rolls up and just starts whale roping 3 to 6 pound largemouth. And I remember KVD with like, what is that? Oh, that's a 6XD. Like that's the new version of the XD. And Keith Combs, a chartreuse powder blue, just going down and just Timmy Horton graphing for 8 hours before he finds a shell bed that's just loaded with 7 pound largemouth on the final day of the tournament. Edwin Evers coming in Bass Fest with 28 pounds while there's a tornado going on in the background. Like, did you fish Kentucky Lake at all during like the Randy Haynes, Jason Lambert heydays, that type of stuff? Or has it always been like a smallmouth joint for you?
No. I grew up in the heydays of Kentucky Lake. My granddad is, I'm going to say this, it would sound crazy, but he was one of the first people to start ledge fishing on Kentucky Lake. Him and his family. You ever heard of buck cannons on Kentucky Lake?
It sounds very familiar.
So Buchanan's is a big marina just south of Paris and the mouth of Big Sandy, and his family ran that for
Okay. Yep.
years. But I used to go with my granddad on Kentucky Lake when I was a young kid, and he would take a flasher and we'd run to the main river and he would zigzag. I call it snaking with his boat. This is before paper maps or anything. And when he would go out further or come in further, he knew there was some kind of change on that river channel. And he would chunk a buoy out and I feel like we'd fish there for the next 3 weeks and use every plastic worm that we had in our boat. But yeah, I grew up, when before ledge fishing was really a thing. And you're talking about the first thing you talked about was Bobby Lane. So I fished when I was 11 years old. I fished my first ever Tennessee State Junior Bass Tournament out of New Johnsonville. And we actually drew a random boat captain. And I drew this guy that looked like Santa Claus. And he had a bass tracker with a 2-stroke 50 Mercury on it. And I was like, we have a place that we have to go to. And I actually had a milk jug tied up on that spot that Bobby Lane won. And we rode all the way down from New Johnsonville, and that 50 horse felt like it took 2 hours. And we rounded that corner at Harmon's Creek going towards Sulphur, and it looked like you said, it looked like a madhouse sitting out there. But that was where Bobby Lane won that tournament at. But yeah, I had a lot of good memories, fun memories of Kentucky Lake, and it's kind of sad that Kentucky Lake is not the same Kentucky Lake that it used to be. Yeah, it's coming somewhat back, but in a new form. It's not the same Kentucky Lake that I grew up on, unfortunately. But there's still some good bags being caught out there.
So you'd rather be catching the largies out there than targeting the smallmouth?
Yeah, for sure. And they just set up, they set up different. The reason why our smallmouth are like they are now is because when we got the Asian carp in the lake, they ate every single piece of plankton. There was no shad left, no bass fry left. There was no small fish whatsoever in the system. And the largemouth just population fizzled and fizzled and fizzled. And those smallmouth were able to survive eating small Asian carp. So the shad that got ate out, they relate to cover just like bass do. They eat algae off rocks, they eat algae off logs, they eat current breaks, ledges, and whatnot. And the Asian carp float in the middle of the river channel, and so do the smallmouth. So the smallmouth are able to keep somewhat of a food source. And as the Asian carp begin to thin, the smallmouth population was able, to boom a little bit. We're starting to see some largemouth back in the system, thanks to the counties and whatnot doing the stocking programs for the past 4 or 5 years. But yeah, different Kentucky Lake, no doubt.
I want to ask you about bars and current breaks. So
yeah.
I've had some poor open finishes in the past. I've never, I had 100 foot, but I still caught a limit on Toledo Bend, and I just kind of missed the boat. Or I've had ones where I lose them. I have never had one where my attitude was so poor going out. I did not catch them in practice. I knew I was not going to catch them in the tournament, and I knew in my head that I do not understand what is going on, and something is going on because I'm talking to guys who are like, yeah, I got a couple schools of smallmouth and stuff like this. I'll tell you how bad it was, John. So I roomed with 4 guys, and we all just had a little bet prior to the first day of the tournament, and we had to guess our weight closest to what we would weigh in on day 1 without going over. And if we were within 2 pounds, it was a little reward if we were the closest. So Berghoff was like, I think I'll have 19.8. And Matt Steffen was like, I think I'll have to 12 pounds. And my buddy Blake was like, I think I'll have 9. My guess was 3 pounds, 10 ounces. I knew that I was making back some gas money because I thought, I might catch one. and in fact, I did. I caught one for 2.7. But I say that to say this. I idled a ton of bars from within side of the dam to the Paris Bridge on both sides, east and west of the lake, and they looked amazing. And you'd get to the tip of these things and you'd have stumps on them, and you would have a channel guts that came in there, but you could do that endlessly on all of these bars throughout the whole lake. But there were some that were magic bars. And those were the bars where the guys just power pulled down and went to town on them. If you're going there to find, like, what makes a magic, like, I've never seen a such spot specific thing where it's like, hey, if I didn't make this cast, I would have zeroed, but I made this cast and I caught 20 a day. Why are those fish so specific on some of those bars and completely vacant then on things that look identical for miles and miles?
Yeah.
Is that a valid question, or am I like
that is
just spewing?
that is a valid question. Let me say this. Growing up on Kentucky Lake and the Tennessee River, bars are the most overrated thing to fish on the Tennessee River. There's no doubt, but 75% of the tournaments that don't have grass on the Tennessee River are won on bars. They're so hard to find bass. You can't scan them. And every bar on Kentucky Lake, on Pickwick, on Gunnersville is a good bar, but at different times. And we're talking water level, current flow, continuous days of wind direction. It's extremely hard to find where the fish are on a bar. So let me see how to put this. All bass on Tennessee River like to feed like we do on a tabletop. They like to feed on a flat surface, but they need some kind of, maybe not deep water access, but somewhere a little deeper to hide in. So most of these bars that the fish get on, they really like to sit 1.5 to 4 foot deep. So when you're looking at anything shallower or anything deeper, that bar is a lot of times not ideal. But when you have a 2 foot flat bar, you might have a little depression in it, and that's where those fish sit, but maybe not necessarily feed. So it is nearly impossible to come across the right spot at the right time. See, where you see these guys pull down and catch fish, that's normally where the fish are currently just living. Most of the time, they're not feeding there. And you have to get so lucky to throw across that spot that's the size of your truck and also get a fish that's not feeding to bite. So it's really hard to do, and it's really hard to know you're going to come across it. You can't really see them on your forward facing. You just have to know, like, hey, some fish live on this spot that's the size of my truck. I'm going to make a few casts. Hopefully they're there. But 95% of the time, they're not there. Like, if I was going to go to a Tennessee River tournament, I would not start looking on bars. I would try to find a way to get some bites. And then maybe as my practice progressed, if I could figure out how to get bites, then I would go look for bars, because a bar is a way to win a tournament, but not a safe way to catch a bass. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, 100%. It'd be very interesting. Like, I encourage all of you to go watch Miles Berghoff's tournament day and practice videos. I don't know how far he's gotten, so I don't want to give that away. But it was a deal where he came in from practice one day and he's like, oh my God, like I found a magic spot. And he had 2 weather days where it didn't pan out for him. But on that second day, I was 300 yards away. I mean, enough to watch him. Like I said, he got there, dropped his poles, and all it was trolling motor, passenger seat, live well. Trolling motor, passenger seat, live well. And he caught 25.5 pounds on the exact same cast in the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And was like, he's like, dude, it's what he said. He said, dude, he's like, it was literally a 1 cast deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very hard to find that stuff. And I will say this, y'all were typical March on Kentucky Lake. The water is a good 2 foot higher, and there would have been more schools on bars, and you could have picked up more random bites on bars. But when y'all were there, most of them, unfortunately, because of the wind and low water, are hanging off the edge of that stuff. That's why you saw guys catching them on stumps, off the edge, you know.
Mhm.
But and like our
It was
winter,
literally a needle in a haystack, then, is what you're saying. For a guy like me who hadn't been there,
yeah,
I had no information. I had a 30-mile stretch that I wanted to find. I knew what I wanted to do with a minnow and a crankbait on the bars. Like,
yeah,
I had what, a 5% chance of rolling across something that was actually going to play for me.
probably at the most, realistically. No,
So
I'm not kidding.
I was
Like,
dead before I even started, John.
yeah. I mean, if you look at that top 10, Miles was probably
Yeah.
the only person that found that.
Oh, 100. There wasn't
Um,
another boat within. I mean, I was the closest boat to him, and I wasn't even remotely on the same type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, what I meant is, like, Miles is probably the only person that caught a fish, that caught bass out of a school of fish on a bar. You know, Ethan did it the last day. He found a school of fish, but it sounded like he caught singles and, you know, off stumps and points and whatnot leading into the tournament. But man, it's so hard to find, and y'all had not ideal conditions for it. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Who is the best, in your opinion, right now at finding offshore stuff on the TVA system? Pick like one guy that you're like, I don't care whether he's on tour or whether he's not, where you can put him on Wheeler, Wilson, Pickwick, Kentucky Lake, and say, you got to find a mega school in one day, and you're putting your money on that guy.
Jake Lawrence.
Really?
Jake Lawrence, fishing the Bass Pro Tour this year.
Yep.
He grew up. We both lived in Union City growing up. Kentucky Lake, Pickwick. He got it on Pickwick for years. I mean, he is the man for that. So yeah, Jody White. He already knew it.
Is that just time on the water?
It's time on the water and understanding the TVA. When the TVA is probably, you think, like, in your mind, is probably the easiest place to learn. But what you learn about the TVA is everything, like you said earlier, Matt, spot specific. There's not a pattern to it. You could fish 1,000 points on Kentucky Lake, but 2 of them have a school of bass on them, and for no rhyme or reason. And once you have that mindset, when you go to other bodies of water, you keep that in mind. Let's not look for a pattern. Look for spots that have a school of bass on it. And so, yeah, Jake Lawrence is probably my pick.
So you grew up fishing current. You grew up fish that were relating to current. You learned how with your grandpa out there and stuff. Was it a transition for you to go to like a Table Rock Lake or Grand Lake or one of these Ozark lakes that sometimes they have, but there's not like a current flow. There is not like a big ledge river channel bite. Was that intimidating to get the first time you got on there and you're like, oh, it's all rock and there's no grass and there's no current?
Yeah, no doubt. I fished my first time I was ever on a reservoir type of lake, as I went to the Open on Table Rock that Mike McClellan won in 2016. And I was running around the lake looking for flat water. What can I scan? Where's there a stump? Where's a brush pile at? It wasn't out there. I had no idea how to break one of those bodies of water down. Thankfully now I can lean on technology to skirt me by those events, because I don't have that old school nature on how to catch bass on those reservoir type of bodies of water. So very intimidating, very confusing. I don't like fishing around rock banks. So
it's wild to me.
Yeah.
Have you gotten into bait development yet? Like bait, rods, reels, that type of stuff? I know there's certain guys. I know you've been with Strike King Lose for a while now. They're big on working with their pro staff on developing stuff. Have you delved into that side of the industry yet?
Got my toes wet, but not dove. I kind of let my legs dangle in the pool a little bit, but I ain't full off dove into the pool. So a little bit, but not much, Matt.
Are you like a tinkerer? Do you have like stuff that you have like in your head that you want to come out, or are you just a meat and potatoes type of guy? You're not a really tinkerer when it comes to tackle?
Mostly meat and potatoes, but I do tinker with, a few things, especially when it comes to deeper offshore fishing around schools, just triggering a few more bites. Mostly meat and potatoes, though.
You got anything else you want to get in here? I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I actually learned a ton in this interview. Like I said, some people will be like, "Oh, Matt only asks questions because he wants to learn for himself." I was curious about that. Like that was fascinating to me on how that works, on like how different fisheries work.
Yeah. I'm good. If anyone else has any questions, I don't mind answering those. But you got anything else?
No, I'm actually like filming. I headed to the headed on the water today. Like it's like a 2-day deal on 2 different bodies of water on how like you break down and find fish on a body of water you're unfamiliar with, which is ironic because I just went and failed miserably at breaking down and finding fish on a body of water that I'm unfamiliar with. So today I picked a 2,500 acre pond with no current in it. We're gonna go out and try to catch some. So, all right, John. Congratulations on a fantastic start to the 2025 season, and I will see you in Texas. You got to stop by the Classic Crawfish Boil there on that Monday. You a crawfish dude?
Sounded yummy. Yeah, sounded yummy. I was listening to that. I had no idea about it till you and
Chris.
Him and Z were talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think they've got like the parchment paper and everything where they do the deal where they just like dump the crawfish on like happens every time when you go down to Toledo Bend, Rayburn, that type of thing.
I won't wear my flip-flops. I don't want no crawfish boiling juice dripping on my toes. I'll wear tennis shoes when I show up.
And the good thing is, like, by the time everything starts, like, that should be out of your system.
Yeah,
so,
it should.
Like, at Rayburn, I went 5 pounds one night from the stump.
Oh,
it was
wow.
like $80 for 5 pounds of crayfish from the crawfish. But, like, how often are you going to be there for a tournament, have crawfish in season, at the stump? Like, you're paying for a little nostalgia there.
You got to. And there's a place at Toledo Bend that's the same way. It's screened in little restaurant. I'm sure you've been there, but you got to visit the stump when you're at Rayburn. You got to go to the place at Toledo Bend, no doubt.
What's the name of the one? I'm thinking of 2 at Toledo Bend. There's one. It's kind of like there's all like sorts of little rooms around it, and it's kind of like rustic, and they do barbecue, and it's like a little bit off the beaten path. You know what? That one that I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know that one. This one is the same road that connects to the bridge.
Okay.
And it's kind of this little bitty place, big gravel parking lot, screened in room, not a lot of room to sit.
I think isn't there a daiquiri place right down the road from there?
There is. Yeah,
I know where you're talking about too. I've frequented the daiquiri drive-through in my day. We would do a day of practice, and then you do a drive-through daiquiri in Louisiana, and they put a piece of tape over the top of the daiquiri, and to keep it closed. And then when you get back and you're working on tackle, you've got like a pina colada daiquiri just hanging out right next to you. And then one of the guys goes and gets 15 pounds of crawfish, and you're living high on the hog.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, John, thanks for jumping on BTL.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Matt. Be glad to be on anytime. So see y'all.
All right. See ya. All right. John Garrett, currently leading the Angler of the Year. Has to be one of the guys on the watch list for this year's Classic. And then also next year's Classic on a river fishery in Tennessee, Knoxville. I think he's going to be there. We're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, wrap things up. BTL on a Monday. We'll be back right after this.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top on Strike King. Gear that just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. AFCO. Any fish, any water.
All right, wrapping things up here on BTL on a Monday. Tomorrow, Blake Capps returns to BTL. We had him in studio after he won the Bass Nation National Championship on Grand Oklahoma Stick. Fished around here for a number of years, made the Elite Series. Not a lot of experience in Florida, not a lot of experience really outside. He's fished some Toyotas and things like that. But we're going to kind of follow him and catch up with him following each kind of stage in the Elite Series season this year. Oklahoma guy, rookie, Bass Nation representative. So he will be on the show tomorrow talking about getting ready for his first Bassmaster Classic, the Florida swing. I think he fished 4 weeks in a row in 3 different states. He said that was the first time he had done that. So Blake Capps on Tuesday, and then depending on if Pollinet can get his all these guys are getting packed to get ready to go to the Classic. So a 50-50 chance that I think we get Pollinet on Wednesday. Also a Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, a bonus Bass Fishing Hall of Fame show this week. And don't forget tomorrow, 6 a.m. Central Time, episode 2 of Best on Tour this week drops with Dave Rush from Best on Tour. Just a objective 5 to 10 minute look at everything that went on this past week in professional bass fishing. Or close the show the same way we opened it. If you are around the Dallas Fort Worth area or any of the surrounding area, it's a great place to say you can get a hotel room. This is the Monday before the Classic. So this is like Monday, and then they practice, or they have like off days like Tuesday, Wednesday, media day, Thursday. Then the tournament is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So this is Monday, 21 and over, Texas Whiskey Ranch in Fort Worth, the Classic Crawfish Boil benefiting St. Jude and Cook's Children. Tickets are $150. That includes your beverages, your crawfish, and your ability to hang out with all 50 of the Bassmaster Classic guys. There's like a Western theme contest. There's also a raffle item. You can donate directly to either St. Jude or Cook's Children if you're not able to be there. For more information, visit classiccrawfishboil.com. That's all we got for today. I am headed to the lake. It should be good. We'll be back with another show tomorrow. See ya.